Wow, really excited for you to listen to this podcast. This one, this is going to go in my top 3 so far. I sat down with Chad Wright, former Navy SEAL, turned influencer, turned instructor. I'm saying this guy's the real deal podcaster. You got to check this out.
The darkest place on earth is underneath an aircraft carrier at night.
Follow along, check it out. Chad Wright coming up.
You have to keep your own ship in order.
Yeah.
Your own ship, your own vessel has to be in order before you can go out into this world and achieve your goals.
Welcome back to the Cannonball Mindset, and today I'm sitting with, man, I don't even know how to describe you because I think so many people, there's such an infatuation over the last couple of years with Navy SEALs. So I don't want to start with you as a Navy SEAL. I think, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a job that you did. It's not who you are. And so former Navy SEAL, but ultra marathoner, really just good human being. I think sometimes we maybe put too many titles on things, but just good human being. I'm sitting with Chad Wright, who I found online that by following. I was in the BYLR, Build Your Life Resume, Jesse Isler's Build Your Life Resume course. You came on as a guest speaker, I think, on one of the calls. And in like 30 or 40 minutes, I was like, all right, this guy's my kind of guy. So I've researched you, I followed you, and now I'm in the woods, the hills of North Georgia, right? Is that we are in North Georgia, right?
You're my layer, man.
I'm in your layer. This is awesome. This is unbelievable. So Chad Wright, thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, thank you for having me, Chad. And yeah, you're exactly right, man. I think, like you said, there's a danger in wrapping your entire identity around one single thing.
Yeah.
And I've seen that so much, man, especially, you're talking about team guys, Navy SEALs. When that job goes away, guys, a lot of times they struggle real bad. I mean, mentally, physically, the whole 9 yards. And it's because they've wrapped their entire identity around that singular thing. And being a SEAL is a special thing, man.
Oh, yeah.
But you're right. You can't let that define you totally as a person, because there's so much life after, the SEAL teams are over. And it's a machine, brother. When you leave, that machine keeps rolling, man.
Right.
So you got to find some way, something else to identify with. And you've almost, for me personally, I had to let go of that Navy SEAL stuff before I could push forward into the place that I am and the space that I'm in now.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I think the idea of saying everybody's at a platform at one point in that. Everybody has a platform. And I tell people this all the time, that there's no one platform that's more important than the other. I'm saying the person that's going to wait on my kids tonight at the drive-thru from Chick-fil-A, is that platform at that moment is no more important than the platform I'm currently on today. It's just different. And so the platform you're on as a Navy SEAL is unbelievably important. Obviously, it's important for our freedom, but it serves a purpose. But once you've completed that mission, that platform you've ascended, God puts you in another platform. Like, all right, now it's time to move to another platform, and now you're on another platform. So you have to be almost flexible or be ready to pivot when called upon for the next platform. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you do, brother. You really do. And, I think one of the biggest things, too, about, you talk about switching to that next platform when you're called upon, or whether life circumstance leads you to the point that you have to transition. One thing that's scary, man, is thinking about having to start back off at the bottom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that scares a lot of people, and I wonder if that's not why a lot of my fellow SEAL brothers, if that's not why they might struggle so hard in that transition point, is because you are at the pinnacle. You're the tip of the spear. Yeah. I mean, you're in charge of millions of dollars worth of equipment and other people's lives, and you're doing all this crazy cool stuff. But when that goes away, and then you think about having to start back off at the bottom, that makes you want to hold on to that past so much more, just for that fear of having to start back over. But I'm gonna tell you, man, I think that you have to start off at the bottom, man. And the reason I say this, Chad, is because look at me right now, brother. I live in a basement, man. I live a very, very simple life. And you know, I feel like it's by design.
Mm,
You got to start back at the bottom and then build your way back up in that
yeah.
future lane, whatever it may be, whatever's coming next. So don't be afraid of starting at the bottom, man.
Mm,
I interviewed a buddy on my podcast the other day. He's a former team guy, Jeff Reed, and he's out in Alaska. He's a dog musher, and he talked about when he got out of the SEAL teams, his dream was to become a dog musher out in Alaska. He started off shoveling dog dog
facts.
droppings
Yeah. Yeah.
out of the dog yard for another musher that was established. So I see all these anyone that you see that has reached the pinnacle, or is really just crushing it within their lane.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, you ask them, and they started at the
Oh yeah.
bottom with a small amount of resources. They
Yeah.
took whatever they had in that moment, and they utilized it to push forward into their next mission.
Yeah, man, I love that. I think that I tell my kids all the time, like, listen, the top of this mountain is the bottom of another, right? So you're going to get to the top, and you're going to be right at the bottom of another mountain. And you got to ascend again,
Yep.
and that's going to be your whole life. And it's not to say that you're going to be stuck in the valleys, but you got to understand that this is how life works. This is the point of life of how many times can I ascend, and then learn what I have to learn, and then do it again. And as you do this, your contribution gets bigger, your reward gets bigger. And I'm not talking monetary reward. I'm
Yep.
talking about the ability to improve the lives of others, your ability to have influence over others, have influence over certain people in your life, my kids, my family, my friends, my faith, stuff like that. But I think that's the whole point, right? Is that once you get there, look around, celebrate it, and realize, all right, now what?
That's
now,
it,
now I
brother.
got to do it again,
That's
right?
it. And I love that example, Chad, because a lot of times you can look at things in the natural world and translate that to your actual life. And like you said, it's just like a mountain, man. It's you starting off. You got to start off to get up a mountain. You got to start off in that valley, man. It's just the way. It's the way that it's designed in nature. It's the way that it's designed in our lives. And then that climb up the mountain, that's where we learn. That's
Yeah.
where that's where we grow. You don't learn or grow once you reach the summit. At the summit, you just take that pregnant pause. You take in the beauty and the magnificence of what you've done. But the growth is in that climbing stage. So, if I could say one thing to people, I mean, it's don't be afraid to start over, even in your 30s, 40s, 50s. It doesn't matter, because starting over is an opportunity for growth, man. In my mind, and that's what I've been getting out of this whole process. In my transition, I've only been out of the Navy since January of 2019.
Oh,
So
wow. So what, coming up on a year?
yeah, coming up on a year. So it's it hasn't been that long, but
That's-
man, it's just people always ask me, what was the most amazing time in your life, and everybody thinks it's some story from the SEAL teams and this and that, and those were all good times. But my most amazing moments and my most fulfilling moments are coming now.
That's awesome.
At this point.
I love that. So, yeah, so there's so much to unpack. Let's start at the bottom of your mountain, right? So, you started out, and you were working as a construction company, and you had an epiphany. You had this moment. Tell us about that moment. That was one of the I call these, and you'll probably hear me refer to it in the podcast several times through this conversation, shift moments. And shift standing for see how I find truth. See how I find truth moments. And you had one of these shift moments while you're working at that construction company. So tell us about that and how that kind of led you to the SEALs.
I love that, brother. I love the shift. That's a real. I'm gonna use that one, my man. I'm gonna use a lot of stuff I've got from you just here in the last 30 minutes or so, brother.
Right.
But yeah, so I was working construction. Just had graduated high school. I was a very substandard student. It wasn't because I lacked the mental capacity to study and do my work. It was just because it wasn't my lane, man. I didn't enjoy school. And so I get out of high school right in a little town right up the road from here where I was born and raised. And I went to work construction, fresh 18-year-old, and it went on for a couple of months, and I had that shift moment, man, and I realized that I look at what's around me, not only in that little job, that little micro community of that construction company, but in the community as a whole, and I realized that if I didn't step out of my comfort zone, that if I didn't, go and um, kind of push my boundaries, that that construction job and that small town, that was going to be my lot in life. That's all that I was going to have. And you know that for a lot of people, that's an amazing life. Greatness, we talk
Yeah.
about greatness.
Yeah.
Greatness is all relative. It's what you want, man.
Right.
For me, that wasn't what I wanted at that time in my life. Now I've come full circle right back to it, but at that time in my life, that wasn't enough to satisfy me as a human being. So didn't have anyone in my family ever serve in the military. Had never even met a individual in a military uniform before. I was very isolated in this small town in Georgia. So I just start looking online, and I see a flyer for Navy SEALs, and it says the hardest military training in the free world. And it really just stood out to me. I had a desire to push my boundaries, and then I see this thing saying, "Well, this is the hardest possible thing that we have to offer here in our country."
Yeah.
And I guess that's what really stood out to me about that specific thing, man. I didn't know how to swim. I had never ran before. I was never played sports.
Mm.
It was just I just almost just went in with blind faith, man.
Yeah, I love that. And so you have this moment, and by no means, I know you have a strong faith, and I have a pretty strong faith, and I don't want to make this a faith conversation, but that flyer, now looking back, that's no accident, right? That's no coincidence that you happened upon that. Do you think? I'm saying
Yeah,
there's a reason for that.
it's all by design, brother. So
Yeah.
and so the one reason that I was a SEAL, um, and there were multiple, I guess, micro reasons, but the overall reason that I was called to be a SEAL is I'm now seeing why. It's because I'm sitting here with you today, brother.
Yeah.
If I would not have went that route, if would not have been led down that path and followed my heart, well, obviously I wouldn't have an audience with you here today, man.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping our conversation here today will impact at least one person out in that world in a positive way. Because if it does, then
Yeah.
all of this is worthwhile.
I love that. Yeah, well, you already got one. You got me. We're only 5 minutes and 10 minutes into the conversation,
I
so
appreciate that.
that
sir.
already has impact on me. I think so. So now you see this flyer, and you're like, all right, I don't have the experience. I don't have the history. I don't have this kind of DNA that's the pedigree maybe of military people that have gone before me. But I'm in. And so, what's the next step? You go, and I know the story, but I wanna let you tell it. Of now, you're gonna go to this Navy SEAL training, and what happens?
Yeah. So and yeah, going all in on that is I think that's one of the beautiful things about being young and almost naive. And I don't think naive is really even the right word. I think it's just being young and not allowing society's opinions to dictate how great you can become. I think as we get older, we start allowing the opinions of society and people around us to, I guess, measure to what we can measure up to. Man, when you're a young man, you haven't gotten all that junk in your head yet. So that's something I still hold on to today. I will never allow society's opinions to dictate how great I can become.
Mm.
I am not a businessman, brother. I'm going to build a awesome business. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing as a SEAL. I was not an athlete. I was not a swimmer, but I chose not to let society's opinions dictate what I could go and accomplish. Um, So yeah, I go into the Navy, and leading up to that, Chad, it took me a long time to get a SEAL contract. I'd say about 3 months. I went and took a physical standards test every week, and you had to pass this physical standards test to get a SEAL contract. To go into the Navy, basically saying if you went to the Navy, you would have 100% chance to go to SEAL training and at least try it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Not to become a SEAL, just for the opportunity to become a SEAL.
to get on the start line.
Yeah, so you got to pass this regiment, this physical test.
Yep.
If you pass that, then they're saying, all right, now you're qualified to take the test, the physical test, to become a SEAL.
That's it, brother. That's it. Yep. So I failed that thing for like 3 straight months every week, man. Most of it was the swimming and the running. I had to learn how to swim. I had to learn how to run, properly, and it was only a 1.5 mile run, but we were talking earlier. I was like you were back in your days when you first started running. I was the same way. I'd never ran a step for fitness. It was just all out in the woods or
fun.
Living life, man. So finally passed this thing, get a SEAL contract, go into the Navy. I get all the way through boot camp. It's the last day of boot camp. We had just had our final training exercise, and we were actually going to our graduation, where you get in boot camp, Navy boot camp, you wear a hat that says recruit on the hat. And after you finish that final training exercise, you swap that hat out with a hat that says Navy. And you're like officially a sailor at that point. You're officially in the Navy. So we're going to this ceremony, and my drill instructor kind of pulls me out of the formation and says, "Hey, Chad, you need to go to medical. They found something on your dive physical." So I'm like, "Oh, this is kind of weird. Last minute, like for real." And so I leave the rest of my class there, division, and head over to medical and walk into the dive medical officer's office. And he says, "Chad, we found you have a pericardial cyst on your heart. This is an asymptomatic condition, but we're afraid when you go and dive underwater as a SEAL that the pressure change will burst the cyst." Now, because it was asymptomatic, the Navy would not remove the cyst. The surgery was too risky. A pericardial cyst is a very rare condition. I'm the only person in the history of naval special warfare to ever be diagnosed with a pericardial cyst.
Wow.
So these doctors had never even seen it before. They knew what it was from medical journals, but they had never themselves seen a case of this rare cyst. So he basically says, "Well, we can still send you out to the fleet, the big Navy." Well, that wasn't where I had set my goal.
Yeah.
And
so you can't be a Navy SEAL. You can be in the Navy. You just can't be a frogman. You can't be a Navy
that's
SEAL.
it, man. But that's where I had set my goal, brother. And he gave me a definitive answer that day. You cannot be a SEAL. You will never be able to be a SEAL. Mm. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts. There was no arguing. This guy had all the power in his hand. So that was the answer. And
he wasn't doing it to crush you. He was doing it because, hey, you have this cyst. You could die. We're not taking a chance that you could die.
Yep.
And as much as it crushes you in that moment, this is the Navy. This is what we have to do.
That's it, brother. Right? And it wasn't even necessarily a thing about me dying. It's if we're on a combat dive somewhere, and I kick the bucket, 30 feet underwater. It's my team that we all, everyone within a SEAL platoon plays an integral role. And if you lose one member, it can put the entire mission in jeopardy. So it was not only about my own safety, but the safety of other team guys out there operating.
So in that moment, in that very moment of him saying that to you, what's your first emotional reaction, and then how do you reel back in from that? Like the initial slap in the face or gut punch. What's that feeling, and then how do you rebound?
It was anger. For me, it was anger. Seeing the rest of these classmates of mine that I had went through Navy boot camp with, getting their Navy hats, getting ready to go, ship out to San Diego and toe the line and actually get a shot at their dream. And then them pulling me out at the last minute and telling me, no, I wasn't good enough. It was anger. And then that was the immediate reaction. I, I'm not going to say that I ever reeled that anger in. I think that anger resided in my heart, you know, in myself
Yeah.
throughout this entire process. But I was able to channel that anger in a way that really just drove me to find some way over, under, or around this obstacle, this massive mountain that had been set before me. That anger was driving me to find a way through this.
Yeah.
I'm actually thankful for that emotion. Anger is not necessarily a bad emotion if you can channel it and use
Correct.
it to accomplish your goal.
Yeah, right. If you feed it the right way,
That's right.
it could help intrinsically motivate you. Used the wrong way, obviously, is detrimental. But so so looking back now, and we'll get to what happens next. But looking back now, would you say that what is the that happened for you? Like that at that very moment now, Monday morning quarterback, and 10 years later, however long it's been, would you say that moment happened to benefit you? Because right now it certainly is, right? From that adversity came a lot.
I think it had to happen, Chad. I don't think that I was prepared for SEAL training. I don't think I would have made it through training if that moment would not have happened. Um, I think it was totally necessary. I think that I had to walk through that furnace of adversity in order to develop the tools mentally and physically to actually complete this training. So yes,
Yeah.
it was all part of the design,
I'm
man.
all part of that design again. So, all right. So you have initial anger still resides within you, but then you're like, all right, I'm gonna use this anger constructively. And what's the next step? So now you have a choice. Obviously we know you became a Navy SEAL, but what's next? What's the part now? What's the story that gets you there?
So I cut all ties from the Navy, showed back up in my little hometown right down the road right here. Um,
So you're like, I'm out.
I'm
Like
out.
you're like, I can't be a Navy SEAL. I'm not settling for being in the Navy. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It just wasn't your goal.
Yep.
So you're like, I'm out.
Yeah, cut all ties. Yep.
Yeah.
And so show back up in the hometown. Of course, that was a tough process because everyone that I went to high school with, and all that, I hadn't been out of high school long at that point, and they're thinking, of course, well, Chad must have quit. Here he is.
Yeah.
What a loser.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Making their
And
judgments.
they're not hearing anything about what's going on in my heart. I mean, who even knows what a pericardial cyst is? Why do I even try to explain it to them? Why do I
Yeah.
even need to explain it to them? So I just let them believe whatever they wanted to believe. Now, I'm not going to say it didn't get to me at times.
Oh yeah.
It was tough, man. But I never gave up on my dream. Like I said, I was driven to find some way to actually complete this mission and this goal that I had set for myself. So I get back home here in Georgia. I never stopped training. I continue to run and swim and do all the things that I know that I need to do to get back to where I need to be. And at the same time, I'm seeking out these surgeons here in Atlanta, heart surgeons, to hopefully take this cyst off my heart. That was hard. We went to multiple surgeons. They wouldn't touch it. They were advising us heavily not to have this surgery done. I finally find a surgeon here in Atlanta that is willing to do the surgery. He was a prior combat surgeon. He had served time overseas. He could understand and appreciated what I wanted to go do from a service aspect. So he decided to tackle this cyst for me.
Nice. And so now you're like, and you're young still. I'm saying you're not even 20 years old at this point, right?
I was a kid, man.
Yeah. So you're making this monumental decision that could 100% put your life at risk, right? So you're gonna have heart surgery, and whether it be through a small hole in your chest or it be cut open your chest, you're still at risk.
Mm-hmm.
just to hit a goal, just to achieve what this goal you set out.
Yeah, yeah, that's it, man. And and I was gambling too, Chad. Even so, not only was the risk of obviously complications during the surgery, but there was a risk once the surgery was over, even if it was successful, that the Navy still wasn't going to let me back in.
Yeah.
There was a very, very high chance that the Navy wouldn't let me back in,
Mm.
even if this surgery was successful. So so I was gambling on in two different lanes. And I remember having one moment of doubt, man, was the morning of the surgery, super early in the morning, driving to the hospital with my dad. And I look over at him and I said, "Hey, Dad, do you really think I should go through with this?" It was setting in, what the magnitude of what was going on here.
Yeah.
And he said, "Son, if you want to be a SEAL, you don't have any choice." And I just said, "Roger that." And
Yeah.
we Charlie Mike from there, man.
I love the military term. So
Yeah.
so again another defining moment. I think these moments happen all along the, like, all right, so I'm going to test your resolve when you find out from the doctor that you can't be a SEAL. Then I'm going to test your resolve again, like nobody's going to do the surgery, and then I'm going to test your resolve again in that moment with your dad. Like, that's all it is. This is like, how bad do you want this? And there's detours all along the way. And you either choose to turn around and go back home, or you choose to fight through the detour. And then you make a little ways and there's another detour. So now you have the surgery. You wake up, you're alive, you made it through the surgery, sister's gone. But it's not like you just get to walk. There's still got to be some sort of recovery from having the surgery. And now you have to get yourself back to the point where I can get back into the Navy. I can show back up and try this again, right? I'm saying it's not like, okay, well, the sister's gone. Now just walk right in. Now you're a Navy SEAL. Now you can try and train for a Navy SEAL.
No, brother, there was definitely recovery. So the surgery was not. It was not like like a little hole. Like they split. They actually peeled my pec up off of my chest and then went in through my rib cage. So they made quite a significant incision. I had chest tubes in for multiple days after the surgery. So yeah, when I got out of surgery, I was hurting, and luckily, being back then being super young and starting with a really good base of health and fitness, I recovered very quickly. And also because I put the work in during recovery, man. I didn't ever lay around and feel sorry for myself. I was doing the things that I needed to do as far as from a physical therapy standpoint to get back to 100%. I was back in the Navy, standing before the same dive medical officer that had disqualified me less than a year after I had gotten out the first time. So we rock and roll, man.
So let me set the timeline. 7 weeks, 7 to 13 weeks. I forget what the number was. I failed the test to get into to have a chance at the boot camp. I finally get through. Then I get through boot camp. I'm going to graduate, I find I have a cyst on my heart. I'm told, nope, I quit the Navy. I then find a surgeon, have surgery, recover from surgery, get back to the same very doctor, and I'm about a year from the time, and if you add, so maybe a year and a half total.
Yep.
Your life is 360, but I'm standing there a stronger, better, tougher, more resolved man.
Totally, yeah, a totally different person because of the adversity, man.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people miss, and I think even people that hear this story may miss it in the sense of it doesn't take forever to change your life, to become the person you want to become, or become stronger, become better, become more resolved. What it takes is a strong desire and a want and a need to get where you want to get, but more so a resolve that you're not going to be deterred. Is that right? I'm saying a year and a half, your life changed, and it all changed because you were determined that this is who I was going to become.
Yeah, totally, brother. And I was, I was maximizing my time. I was, it wasn't. I wasn't. I was staying present throughout that entire year and a half, obviously, and maximizing my time and being specific about the goals and the things that I had to do to get back to where I needed to be. I laid out that roadmap and went the shortest route to get there, and yeah, it ended up being about a year and a half, and I don't see how I could have done it any faster. But yeah, it
Mm.
doesn't take long at all if you're specific about what you want, and you stay present and maximize the time that you have every single day, and don't dwell too much on the fear of failure
Yeah.
and all the other silly stuff that's going on around you, brother.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of my I have all these mantras and these thoughts in my head when I'm running. Like I'm driven by these sentences or these stories I tell myself. And one of the things I tell myself all the time, and speak about a lot, is in life you get what you believe you're worthy of. Because if I believe I'm worthy of greatness, then I'll do great things. But if I believe I'm worthy of lack, then I'll do lackful things, right? And so you had this resolve that I'm worthy of this position. I'm worthy to be a frogman. I'm worthy of this success. And that's kind of your driving force. Would you agree?
I agree 100%, brother. Yeah, I mean, yes, that's the first step in the whole thing. You got to believe it. You
Yeah.
got to believe it, and you got to have enough courage to speak it out loud.
Yeah. Well, there's only one or two thoughts. Either you believe that you were created for a life of abundance and worth, or you believe you were created for lack.
Yep.
And regardless what your faith is, I can't wrap my head around that there's some God that creates people that were created less than or created lack. Because that means God made a mistake, and I don't know if that's possible. So I think that the belief that's a strong belief that starts any mission. Agreed?
Yeah, and you talk about seeing, you talk about people that, are created less than or created, look, man, I think a lot of that is the labels that we put on people as society, man. You want to talk about what God says about it. God says that every member of this body, every member of us as the body of Christ has a equally important job, whether you're the foot, the toe, or whether you're the brain, the eyes, and the ears. They're all, and you look at the natural body, look at yourself in the natural.
Yeah.
The little things down here on your feet that are shoved in shoes and stink all the time, your toes and those things are just as important as the eyes that are set
see.
here in your
Yeah.
head. So, it's just how society's labeled it. And there again, greatness is so relative. I've said before, I know guys that, right down the road from here that have never left this hometown, wear overalls every day of their lives and fool with cows and farm. And they're some of the greatest men on earth,
Yeah. I love that.
because they are fulfilled, they're happy, they've raised a beautiful family, and they've lived a life enjoying themselves and doing what they love to do, man.
Yeah, man, there's so much there to unpack. So, because I couldn't agree more. So now you're going to be now. The doctor says what? You're standing in front of the doctor. What's that conversation?
So I think that he really, if anybody could understand what I had done, the sacrifice that I had made to get back into his office that day, it was him. I don't think that anyone else outside, since he was the medical professional that had diagnosed me, disqualified me, he wrote up all the paperwork. He knew the ins and outs of what I had to potentially conquer to reach my goals. He knew it better than anyone else. So when I showed back up in his office, I'll never forget the look on his face, like, dude, what are you doing back here? This is weird.
Yeah.
And I put the paperwork down and he really didn't give me any trouble, man. I think, he obviously reviewed the paperwork, reviewed the medical evidence and documents of the surgery. And I think that he appreciated again what I had done. And he said, rock and roll, brother.
I love that. So now, all of this, I've done all of this. I'm still not a Navy SEAL.
No, a long ways off.
Still got to go through buds. Still got to go through Hell Week. Still got to go through the rigors where you haven't even got to the part where people are ringing the bell to quit.
No,
This is like the half a mile warm up, and you got the 26 miles still in front of you.
Yeah, I hadn't even towed the line yet, man.
So now what? You're heading out to San Diego.
Yeah, so that's it, man. I was there actually in Great Lakes, Illinois, for a few months while they had to work some waivers and stuff, and just solidify all the paperwork side of my reentry into the Navy, and run it by the big doctors up in D.C. and stuff. Everyone had to sign off on this. Again, this was the first case in naval special warfare history,
Yeah.
of not only diagnosis but then of a successful surgery, then coming back to be a SEAL.
Yeah.
So everyone wanted to put their hands on it and sign off on
Yeah.
it. But yeah, I finally get out to Buds, and that's pretty. I mean, of course I have stories about Buds, and yes, of course it was everything that it was cracked up to be. But it was really a pretty simple process for me. I mean, I had so much invested. I went through training flawlessly, was never rolled. No performance issues, no injuries, nothing.
No,
Just
no thought of ringing the bell. And the ringing the bell, for people who don't know, is if you want out, there's literally an actual bell you go ring. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, being a SEAL is like a double volunteer program. You have to volunteer for the Navy, then you have to volunteer to become a SEAL. So when you're a volunteer, you can quit at any time with no repercussions.
Yeah.
And that's the way SEAL training is. It's totally voluntary. At any time you can ring the bell, and it's over. But for me, no, I can honestly say, that I never once thought about ringing the bell. And I can honestly say, and I do not say this lightly, man, I would have suffered death before I didn't complete that training.
Wow.
I mean, it was just there was nothing else.
So I don't want to. I want to be respectful of your time because there's so much I want to ask you. So I don't want to spend too much time diving into the Navy SEALs training, because I think there's I think there's people who can listen to a million podcasts about Navy SEAL training, and I think what makes you special is, one, the story leading up to it. I think the fact that you became a Navy SEAL, and there's a million stories there. Maybe that's for a different time. I want to get to you become a Navy SEAL, you get through training, you don't ring the bell, you're resolved in what you want to accomplish. Tell me about the next stage of your life. This becomes a way of life for you for 12 years.
Yeah, yes, I did 12 years active duty. Yep.
So you're active duty. What's the mindset? Because that's really what I want to dive in there with you is, what's the mindset to get through 12 years where you're putting your life at risk on I think one article, one podcast I listened to said that you were deployed 300 days a year, something like that.
Yeah, a
Right?
lot of times, yeah, and that wasn't necessarily always deployed overseas, but on average, a year, what a year looks like for active duty SEAL, you're usually going about 300 days out of the year,
Yeah.
whether it's training or deployment.
Yeah. And some of those deployments are, I'm assuming, pretty dangerous.
Yeah. Oh,
Right?
yeah. I mean, the training is we lose more guys in training than we lose in combat.
Mm.
So it's you train as a SEAL. The training is so realistic, and you're pushing the limits. You're trying to push the limits and replicate the worst possible scenario that you're going to encounter in combat. So the training is highly, highly dangerous. And then, of course, yes, the deployments are the same way, just as dangerous. So it really never ends.
So here's a may seem like an off-putting question or a crazy question, but not most people that listen to this podcast have not been a Navy SEAL or are not going to be a Navy SEAL in their life, either by choice or by circumstances. Just that's not what wasn't their lane. But we talk a lot about, if you want to become the best, and Navy SEALs are the tip of the spear, as you said, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a Navy SEAL, whether you're a sales professional selling, chemicals, or you're a teacher or whatever it is. One of the things that I try to understand is the amount of practice that goes in. Like, you're practicing. When you're saying training, that's simulated practice. I'm practicing for what could happen in the real world, right? Do you think that that's an important aspect of success, is practicing over and over and getting yourself right for that game day?
Yeah,
Regardless of what you do?
totally, brother. I think it's important to train like you fight. So to train realistically, and then another thing, man, is we train the reason that we train so hard, we train during times of peace, and this is the same in life. You train during the times of peace and serenity. So when you do get into that battlefield scenario, you have the tools that you need and the knowledge that you need to make the right decisions when they really count.
Yeah.
And I think about that. Out running, man. It's like the downhills. Like we're gonna go running later, and a lot of people look at the downhills as just a way to just kind of relax and let your legs, fly out and just kind of get sloppy. And I think we're like that as humans a lot. We think those times in life where everything's just just perfect, and we're on that downhill section, and it's easy. We don't think about getting anything out of those downhills, man.
Yeah.
But in running, you can get something out of your downhills. You can work on your leg turnover. You can really push the envelope on that downhill and get a lot of benefit from that downhill section, whereas every other runner out there is just, using it as a place to take a wrap off. If you focus on getting something out of that downhill, you're going to be better than all the people that don't do anything with that downhill section. It's the same in life, man. When life is perfect and just everything is just flowing, and you're on that downhill section, and you're not having to put any effort in. If you don't take the initiative to get something out of that downhill, to train, to put yourself in situations, inflict adversity on yourself, whether it be through fitness, running, whatever it may be, then you're not going to be prepared when that downhill's over and stuff gets hard again and you go back up the hill.
Man, I love this. I was so much there. I think we have a mutual friend, Charlie Engel. I think you met Charlie Engel at Jesse's 29029. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So ultra marathoner, ran across the Sahara, ran across Africa, and now has this crazy challenge he's doing. I went running with him one time, and we were talking about Hell on the Hill, this event at Sarah and Jesse's house. And I said, I got to train for this thing. And he goes, let me just give you the best advice ever. He goes, you're not making time up going up the hill. I don't care how fast you are or how slow you are. The difference between the fastest person up the hill and the slowest person up the hill is incremental. He said, but if you can master the downhills, if you can figure out how to fly down the downhills and become really strong and master that movement, everybody else is going to take it easy on the downhills. Yep. He says psychologically. And so what happened was I was training for a marathon. I forget what marathon at that point. And I was training, and when it would rain or it would snow or it would be windy or whatever, like, all right, the circumstances are too bad outside. And I'd stay inside. And it like flipped a switch. And I'm like, now if I see rain outside, I'm like, oh, it has to be a run. If it's snowing, it's got to be a run. Like now I'm training when I would be taking off. Mm-hmm. And that's where you really make up ground, right? Where like be prepared for. Courtney DeWalt, ultramarathoner, said she goes out and runs sometimes where she doesn't bring any gel, she doesn't bring any nourishment, she doesn't bring anything. For when those battles come, when those times come, she's prepared for it because it's going to happen.
That's exactly right, brother. That's a beautiful thing about, and actually inflicting some discomfort and some adversity on yourself is because it's in your control at that point.
Yeah.
But you're learning and you're training and you're learning the tools, how to master and utilize the tools in that controlled environment. So when you get in the situation in life when the environment or the situation is out of your control, you're prepared to take care of business there.
Yeah, man, I love that. So now you're a SEAL. You meet your wife, your current wife, at some point while you were a SEAL, correct?
Yeah.
Perfect. You get married and you decide at some point to get out. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I think you became an instructor. Mm-hmm. What's it like going from being the guy in the battle, in the field, to now instructing these young, I say young kids, you're still pretty young, but these new SEALs, I assume. What's that transition like? Why?
It's an amazing opportunity for me because you realize that you can only ever become the master by teaching. So there's a process. If you want to become the master, first you've got to be the student, and you learn the tools, and then you go out and you utilize the tools. So you're the actual person in the field, in combat, whatever it may be, on the floor, in the business environment, whatever it may be. But you will never become the master until you step away from that role and actually start teaching. So for me, it was an amazing opportunity. I found a real passion for teaching. I probably learned more in 4 years as a SEAL instructor than I did all the other years that I served. So, like, it was just, you can learn so much when you're in that role. So for me, it was an honor. It was, it changed my life. It showed me, a new passion of mine, and it just, as a tactician, as a SEAL, it brought me to the next level. Um,
Mm.
So.
I love that. And so do you think that was again, this is your life design. So now you're teaching this. And what was the moment where you said, okay, now I've Navy SEAL, done it, checked off the box, contributed, became who I wanted to become. Then I become an instructor and I teach, and I couldn't agree with you more. You don't master anything until you can teach it to somebody else and they actually can adopt it and put it to use, right? It's almost like the handoff. And so then you become an instructor, you do that. And then at some point you said, all right, it's time for me to move on. And you leave Navy SEAL, where you had said a lot of people then have this kind of drop off. You knew that, but yet you still left the Navy SEAL. I'm saying again, you're sitting here right now. You're still pretty young.
Yeah, yeah. So I was actually, Chad, I was actually medically retired. So decision was made for me to leave the SEAL teams by medical professionals,
Yeah,
and it was just from injuries that I had sustained overseas and in training, and just throughout this decade of service.
yeah,
And it became, and I don't want to get too much into that, man, but
yeah,
it became, certain things with my balance and my vestibular system, the blast waves that you get. I was a breacher,
yeah,
so a lot of that stuff really will destroy the things within your inner ear that control your balance, and
yeah,
all that good stuff. So it became a little iffy of whether or not I should be in an operational environment.
yeah,
And at that point, the medical professionals decided to medically retire me.
yeah.
I probably would have stayed in the SEAL teams for another, until 20, if
Oh yeah, because
that
then you
wouldn't,
could retire and
yeah, if
yeah,
that wouldn't have been the case.
yeah,
So, yeah, that was a little out of my hands, a little unexpected for me. But hey, man, again, it's all part of the design. This is where I need to be right now, and I don't let any of that stuff really drag me down or affect what I'm doing as I'm moving forward.
yeah. Because well, now again, now you're out and you create this company. Literally you're creating a brand. You have a brand, 3 of 7,
Hmm.
which we'll talk about in a second. You start becoming this ultra athlete, and doing something that it appears, I haven't asked you this, but appears you absolutely love being out there in the mountains, running, doing these ultra races. I'm saying that seems like right up your lane. That seems like what you were created for. Would that be an accurate description?
Yeah, I love it. I really do. And I'll tell you what I love most about the ultra running for me. It was born out of a need for me to have something to challenge myself on a high level. So I started ultra running about a year before I knew my time in the SEAL teams was going to come to an end, and it became the next thing for me to really push myself and challenge myself, the next platform, if you will. Um, but as I've kind of developed in ultra running, now I'm driven more to go to these races for the brotherhood, the camaraderie, the time in the outdoors. It's not so much anymore a competitive thing for me. So I've won some races. I've got tons of podium and top 10 finishes. So, but nowadays, I might do one or two races a year that I actually go to race.
Yeah,
And that's just to kind of stoke that competitive spirit within myself. The rest of the races for me are just about the camaraderie, passing on the lessons that I've learned. That's where we can make the biggest difference, man. Um, I do a lot of public speaking now, and one thing that I do with that, and the way this transfers is, if I go to a place to speak, and I have an hour to give a speech, and then this group, maybe they have like an athletic event
Yeah.
or a dinner or something after the speaking event. I'm usually one of the only speakers that will stay around and actually go and compete with the people I just spoke to
Yeah.
in whatever the event is. And so I do that. And, I make it a point to do that if the opportunity is there every time that I go, because I feel like that's where I can make the biggest impact, is not from the stage. It's on ground level with individuals
Mm.
having one-on-one conversation in the midst of adversity.
Love that.
That's where I like in an ultra race, you get that, man. You get that one-on-one interaction with people that are less experienced or are less mentally or physically prepared than I am. And I get that one-on-one time with them, and I get to see them grow and accomplish their goals.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about ultra running. And I also love the perspective that it brings me in life. Just learning, it teaches you over and over again how to break things down. It reconfirms the power of the spoken word. All these things, the ultra running just really sets in concrete.
Man, you would think that this podcast was designed, because where I'm going next is exactly what you just talked about, and that is the power of the spoken word. It is the mindset that it takes, and this is not for ultra running. This is not for Navy SEALs. This is for any human being that was ever created. This power of the spoken word. And I know it is my most important tool that I use in my life. Tell me what that means to you, the power of the spoken word, and why does it matter so much in success or in life?
It's my number one tool too, brother. And what it means to me. Again, I'll give you an example from the natural and how it transfers into us as humans. Man, first of all, the darkest place on earth is underneath an aircraft carrier at night. So, and we, not a lot of people have been there, but in these combat diving missions that we would do as SEALs, you dive under these massive ships, and it's just the blackest black you'll ever see or ever experience. I mean, nothing compares to it. And we've got to plant this little explosive on this enemy ship to disable the ship. You want to disable the ship immediately. You don't want it to be able to kind of like get out of the harbor or float and allow your enemy to react. You have to disable this thing immediately. So you feel your way along the bottom of the hull because you can't see anything, and you've got this small explosive, and you're looking for this little bitty thing called the rudder. And it's just this little mechanism. It's the main control surface that steers the direction of this massive vessel. And without that rudder, if I can disable that rudder, the ship is dead in the water. It can't control which way it goes. It's useless. And from combat diving, I thought about that. I was like, well, what's the parallel here? What is this little bitty thing that controls this massive 100-ton vessel? It's like a living city in and of itself. And what's the parallel here? Well, we have a rudder too as human beings, and it's our tongue. It's this little thing that sits in the midst of this powerhouse, this body of ours, this massive vessel that will control and does control the outcomes and the direction of our lives and situations, the outcomes of our relationships, the outcomes and success of our business, our professional lives. That is your rudder, man. And so you got to take control of your rudder, man.
Wow.
So that's what the power of the spoken word means to me. And I try to tell these things through stories to make it, again, relative to the listeners. And there again, you just draw a parallel from something out here and how it transfers. Look at things around you and think about how they transfer to yourself.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, like Powerful. And so when you say it's your rudder, the tongue, the words you use are your rudder, that means you have to be very intentional. Like one of my favorite books of all time is a book by Ruiz, and it's called the Four Agreements. And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word, and it's the words you use to yourself. And so, why is it that your words are your rudder? Why is it that the words that you use, why does that dictate so much of your life?
That's a good question. And I think it's a really it's a really deep answer to that, Chad. I mean, so one thing about the words to me is, so the reason that the thought is the thought doesn't matter. You're going to have thoughts come into your head, but that thought is not real. It's not real to anyone except for you. When you speak a word, it goes out and it becomes something measurable. It becomes something real. It's
Yeah,
sound waves.
yeah,
We can measure the
yeah,
waves of these words that we speak. So that action is so powerful when
yeah,
you take whatever's in your head and you speak it out into, this is what I call the kingdom of the air,
yeah,
and it becomes part of this reality that's going on around us. And also, words, they're like bullets, man. You can't take them back.
yeah. It's out there.
That
That becomes your now truth.
that's why they're so powerful. And that's why you should never become complacent with the words that you say. And yes, you should be intentional, but also you should not become complacent with your
Yeah,
speech
I love that.
because you don't get them back. It's just like a bullet, brother. You become complacent with a weapon, and that bullet goes the wrong direction and hits someone that it shouldn't hit, you don't get it back.
Yeah,
Words the same way. And I don't even want to lessen the importance of I don't want to say it's any less dangerous, because your words, man,
uh,
can take lives, or they can
mhm.
give life, man.
Man, that's truth.
So
And there's so much. There's the idea of man, things you say out of anger, things you say in jest, things you like. There's no differentiate. Your brain doesn't know. Your brain doesn't, biology, not psychology, doesn't. Your brain doesn't know the difference between humor or joking or anger. It just knows the words, and those words now become real. So it's almost in the sense of, I know you don't cuss, and it's because those words mean don't benefit you. It doesn't benefit you and your brain. I can only say words. I'm only going to say words that benefit me in the moment or in my life. Is that right?
that's it, brother. And of course, Chad, I make mistakes like everybody
Yeah,
else. I mean, you're gonna slip up, you're gonna make mistakes, but again, it's
yeah,
just being intentional, not becoming complacent. And I'll tell you a story, man. One of the best example I've ever seen of the power of the spoken word, and how it is so much more powerful than the thought, is my best friend in SEAL training. He had some self confidence issues. He was more physically capable than I was to make it through SEAL training, but he had been having these thoughts for quite a while that maybe he wasn't good enough to be there, and but he was having those thoughts, but he never expressed them through his words. And he was fine. He was making it through training. He was passing all the evolutions. And he had a moment one day, a real moment of weakness, and he finally expressed those thoughts with words. And he came to me and he said, Chad, I don't think I'm good enough to make it through this training anymore. And it wasn't 5 seconds later, he was ringing the bell and quitting.
mm,
So he was crushed by that single statement. The thoughts did not crush him. He could continue to push forward within his mission as long as he contained those thoughts. And another thing, too, Chad, don't just contain those thoughts, combat those thoughts.
yeah,
So when those negative thoughts come in, we know that the spoken word is more powerful than the thought.
yeah,
So counteract or counterpunch that thought with a positive statement.
yeah,
That's how we kind of kind of
Oh yeah.
counterbalance that, man.
Yeah, so the words are really the accelerant for the thoughts. If you can have the thoughts, there are I'm not a breacher. I don't know anything about explosives, but there are parts of an explosive that in it by itself do nothing.
You could
But
take a block of C4 and you can sit here and bang it with a hammer, dude. It's never gonna go boom. You're exactly right.
but I add a certain thing to it. That's the word
That's
kaput.
it.
And so to your point, I think I have, listen, my whole life, most of my life was filled with the wrong thoughts that that made me say the wrong things, which made me believe the wrong things. And it was a very clear definition of life. I never went to college. I graduated high school with a 1.6 grade point average. I was the worst student you could possibly think of. And it was only because my words were I wasn't counterpunching the thoughts. I was accelerating the thoughts.
Yeah.
I was adding fuel to it, and it was just kaboom, kaboom. All of a sudden, I start changing the words I say to myself. I'm start counterpunching those thoughts, saying things like "I am worthy," "I am enough," I'm capable," I'm all these things. And now, even to this day, I'm 45 years old, and it's still a counterpunch most days of the week. Right, most moments I'm like, all right, I'm thinking, am I smart enough to give this talk? Am I capable enough? And then I'm like, that's my thoughts, and my words are like, I am enough. That's where I wear a bracelet that says I'm enough. It's my Superman cape.
That's the other thing I got from you earlier, Chad, that I am
Yeah,
enough. I mean, that dude, that is nothing more powerful than that, brother.
it's everything, right? It's like
Yeah.
that's when I'm running. We're gonna go for a run later, and there's gonna be a point where we're going up a hill that my thoughts are gonna be like, I can't get to the top of this hill. That'll be my thoughts. The minute I think that, I look at my wrist, and I'm forced to. It never leaves my wrist, and it says, I am enough. I snap my wristband, and I say it. When I snap my wristband, I say it out loud, and all of a sudden, I'm at the top of the hill. And
That's
I know that
powerful.
sounds crazy, but that's the counterpunch, isn't it?
And that's so powerful, man. And you talk about, I know that sounds crazy, and to a lot of people, a lot of this stuff might sound crazy. And I'll tell you, to take it even one step further, Chad. And I know you subscribe to this same concept. The words that you speak not only create and change your reality and the outcomes of your situation, but they go as deep as affecting you on a physical health level. Have you ever had a job? Maybe you're out, say you're out digging a ditch or a water line, and keep saying, "Man, this job is killing me. This job is." Would you believe it if I told you that if you keep saying that, that job is actually killing you?
Oh
And
yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me if you croaked from a heart attack right then and there.
Oh yeah.
Now, if you were saying something different or not saying anything at all is even better.
Yeah.
No, what would be better than saying it's killing me?
It's
Then
making me stronger.
it's yeah. Would you have the same? I'm telling you, it even will affect you on a physical.
Oh.
You'll be sick less.
Oh.
All that.
Oh yeah, listen, I do an exercise. I did it with Jesse when I spoke at his event, where there's a great this doctor has passed away. His name is Dr. David Hawkins, and he wrote a book called Power versus Force. Most unbelievable book, probably in my top 10 books I've ever read. And I've done it with I've done it with NFL football players from the Baltimore Ravens. I've done it 1,000 times, where I can predict your strength just by the words you say. I can literally make you weak. I can show you how you're weaker just by the words you say. And people don't understand that it's all wired together.
Mm-hmm.
What you speak will affect your physical strength. That's why that's why people, what do they do before they go into battle? They're saying the right things out loud because it physically makes them stronger, right?
It does, brother. It
Yeah.
does.
I read somewhere that somebody said, and again, people think that this is crazy, but that if you keep telling yourself aloud that I'm going to get cancer, I'm going to get cancer, I'm going to get cancer, mark my words, you're going to get cancer.
I agree 100%, man. And I'm by no means a doctor or a scientist,
Yeah.
but I agree 100%.
Yeah, it's crazy. So now you got this. Now you expressed how your word is your rudder. How do you when you're coaching somebody, and you're doing the last man standing. And I want to talk about the 3 of 7. I want to talk about don't die in the chair. But you're coaching somebody, and they're in the midst of the adversity, and they want to stop. What do you tell them? What do you like? You're standing beside them. They're 50, 60 miles in. Is it enough for you to say it to them, or do they have to? They have to say it. They have to say the words. You can't just hear it. They got to say it.
They have to say it for themselves. You're exactly right. I mean, they just hearing it, it becomes contagious. So just
Yeah.
hearing that positivity, it does become contagious. But they have to eventually have the courage to speak those words for themselves. And that's the perfect example is when Jesse Itzler and I we did a 100 miler together a few months ago, and we're deep into this race, man. We're like 80 miles deep. We've been awake for, who knows how many hours, and it starts to get pretty tough. The conditions were nasty, and I looked over at Jesse and I said, "Hey, man, crazy thing is, I never get tired." And he looked at me like I was freaking crazy, And I said, "Jesse, I want you to say it." And he said, I never get tired. I said, "No, man, say it like you mean it."
From the
And
gut
from the gut, man. And that became both of
mantra.
our mantra and our new reality. Anytime that fatigue set in, we could pull from that mantra and take control of our rudder, have the courage to say it, speak it out loud. I never get tired. This isn't about being cocky. This is about me getting through the race, man.
Yeah.
I'd go into the aid stations. I'd be telling all the aid station workers, it's crazy, man. I never get tired. It wasn't about me being cocky. It was just for me.
Yeah,
You know what
right.
I mean? But
I
that
love
became
that.
our new reality, and it just gave us the energy that propelled us throughout that race, and we finished that race and achieved every goal that we had set for ourselves.
Which is amazing. I tell my kids, I have twin daughters, and for as long as I can remember, I'll say to them, "I love you. Tell me why." And people look at me like I'm crazy. But the concept was, when I say I love you, tell me why. It's important that they know I love them. I want them to have that certainty. But self-love is the greatest love. I can't fully love anybody until I love myself first. And so for me, I knew that my daughters were going to be faced with, like most girls and most human beings, they were going to be faced with adversity, and their rudder, their true north is their amount of self-love they have. So from an early age, I'd say, "I love you. Tell me why." And they had to say, "Well, because I'm smart, because I'm beautiful, because I'm a good sister, because I'm a good Christian, because and all of a sudden, that became their Wonder Woman cape. They were saying to themselves so much that when adversity hit, it didn't affect because they had been telling themselves this for so long. I think a lot of people just they subscribe to the wrong story that ego is saying I love myself, saying that I was born for greatness. Really, true ego stands for edging God out. It's not about God, it's about me. That's true ego. Real belief is that I was created with the DNA of greatness in me. It's up to me to live out that life, to bring that to truth. Right? I was given all the tools. I was given the same tools as you by God. Now I got to go use it. So I got to say these words to myself.
That's it, brother. No, I love it, and you're exactly right, Chad. You have to keep your own ship in order.
Yeah.
Your own ship, your own vessel has to be in order before you can go out into this world and achieve your goals. So it's so important to spend time focusing on yourself.
Yeah.
For me, daily.
Yeah, I came in, there was an early morning flight to come in this morning, but I knew you train 4 hours every single day. 4 hours every day. And I was
Yep.
like, all right, I can't come before noon because the guy wakes up at 6 in the morning. You do your alone time, right?
Yep.
You read the word, and then you spend 4 hours focusing on you. And then there's business time. Is that
That's
right?
it, bro.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I'm not interfering with his 4 hours. I'm not interfering with his reading time. We'll catch the 10 o'clock flight, be here at 12, get here at 2, and then 2 to 5 is work time, right?
Yeah, and thank you for respecting my time, Chad. I really do. I mean, that means a lot to me, man. And that's why I feel like we're sitting here now and having wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
is because, I got to have my time this morning. If you'd have showed up at 9 o'clock,
Yeah.
I probably would just sit here and,
Be
not had much to say. You know
and
what
you'd
I
be
mean?
itching like this is my training time. I gotta be
That's it,
training time,
brother.
right? Yeah. So all right. So talk to me about this business that you started. This, and it really is amazing. First, let's talk about 3 of 7.
Mhm.
What does 3 of 7 mean? And where did it come from?
So the number three is representative of our body, soul, and spirit. The three aspects of us as humans. The number seven is the universal number for completion. So essentially, what we wanted to figure out is how can we master, nourish, and maintain our body, soul, and spirit to achieve a more complete and wholesome life, um, as just a human being. So that is essentially the mission of 3 of 7. We have a podcast where we talk to people about.
Amazing
I
podcast.
appreciate that, Chad, and we talk. That's what we talk about. We talk about people's, not only their struggles but their day to day life, and how they master, nourish, and maintain those three aspects of themselves, to achieve a wholesome and complete lifestyle. We have products, we have T-shirts and hats with the mantras that I've used to complete myself
Yeah.
and push forward when times have gotten hard in life.
Yeah.
And then with the most recent product is the finishing school, where
This
I'm
is
gonna,
crazy. So
yeah,
so hold on. Before you tell that story, because I want to talk about 3 of 7, and then I want you to tell you, because there's a lot of events. You can listen. People could spend every day of the year doing events, and they still only cover 1% of the events out there,
Mhm.
right? But this event that you have is bananas. It's crazy, awesome, right?
Thank you, Chad.
But let's talk about this 3 of 7. So we have this idea: mind, body, spirit.
Or body, soul,
Body, soul,
spirit
right?
is the way
Yep.
we call it.
Okay.
Same, but same
Yep.
thing.
And then completion is, we're on this mission for mastery, but mastery in those 3 areas is it ever really achieved? Like, do you ever get to the point where you mastered your body? I'm saying I'm 45. I'm in the best shape of my life, bar none, and I'm still rounding first base, right? So, do you ever actually get to mastery in these levels, or is that the mastery, the pursuit of?
Yeah, it's definitely the pursuit of, Chad. And that's why we talk about, the guests we have on the podcast. We find the most complete people that we can find. We
Yeah,
don't find complete people because they should never really exist.
yeah,
I'd say, the day that you get put in the dirt, that's when it's all complete, man.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a journey, and it's about being intentional. What are you doing to nurture your body? What are you doing to nurture your soul? Your soul being your mind, will, and emotions, and then also your spirit. Your spirit being the thing that connects you to something higher, something bigger than yourself.
I love that. I really love that. And your podcast it's relatively new. I think you're in like the first 6 months, something like that. Is that
Yeah, we've been
first couple months?
been rolling for like 2 or 3 months,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like
So
that.
probably you got a lot of episodes out already. I've listened to all of them. They were awesome. And you have literally everyday heroes every day. So not only do you have high profile people like Jesse Isser, but you have, like, you just had a psychologist on, an ultra psychologist and a therapist and an
Yeah,
ultra
Mary.
runner, right?
Yeah,
Mary something,
yeah.
right? Phenomenal guest. And so definitely check that out if you're listening to it now. Let's talk about, and I want to talk about, actually, let's talk about this first. Let's talk about Don't Die in the Chair,
Mhm.
because this is cool. This is a great story. This is a great mindset lesson for a lot of people. And I know you have T-shirts and hats and stuff that people wear, and I see people, and I have friends that I see post, and they're like wearing the shirt "Don't Die in the Chair." What, where did that come from? What's the story behind Don't Die in the Chair?
So don't die in the chair. It came from the last man standing race. And for people that don't know, this is a race where you run a 4.16 mile loop every hour on the hour until there's only one runner left standing.
Hmm.
So that's the just the general format of the race. So I had chosen to do this race not only to really put determine what my limits would be for that day because there's no finish line. You go, for me, I go until my body breaks or I'm the last guy there.
Yeah.
That was the decision that I had made. But also each hour we had dedicated to a fallen brother. Actually, if you look at this right here,
Yeah.
that's the last card I carried on my last lap for a good friend of mine named Blake Marston. So every hour I would have one of those in a wrist coach, and I would focus on the memory of that guy for that hour. So it became something, again, bigger than myself. Um, well, I could not promise my guys that I was running for victory because I didn't know when my body was going to break. Somebody there might be better than me that day,
Yeah.
and you know they might be more durable. They might go further than I can possibly go. So I couldn't promise them victory, but I could promise them that I would not die in the chair. So after each loop, if you got in at like you did your 4.16 miles in like 50 minutes, there was a chair and you could sit in that chair until the top of the next hour. So you took like 10 minutes or
You
so.
just had to be at the start line at the next hour.
That's right. So I promised them that I would not die in the chair, that when death came, and death being the race, not physical death.
Yeah.
I'm talking about death within a situation.
Yeah.
When that came, I would be out on the race course battling for every step. So that was my promise to them. I will not die in the chair. And again, I transferred that mantra now into all aspects of my life, business, relationships, you name it. If death within that situation or that scenario, if that comes, it's going to come while I'm on my feet, making forward progress.
Yeah. And so what happened? So where did you die, quote unquote,
Yeah.
in that race?
So it was, I had ran 116.5 miles and I think like 28, I think it was like 28 or 29 hours. There were only 3 of us left. And it was really, really muddy.
Yeah.
And I had to tie my shoes really, really tight to keep the mud from sucking my running shoes off my feet. And what ended up happening was that top lace of my shoe had basically sawed that big tendon in the front of your ankle.
Yeah, the one that makes you go up
Yeah,
and down.
it had been moving up and down over that top lace of my shoe for, whatever, 25, 26 hours. And I got to where I couldn't no longer flex my toes toward my shins. So every stride, my feet were just like dead weight. And I just couldn't make any more progress. And of course, I went back out on that last lap and didn't make it back in time to go out on the next lap.
Don't die in the chair.
That's it, brother.
Man, that's such, again, take a story in your life. And this is anybody. I tell people all the time that facts sell, but stories tell, right? Facts tell, stories sell. And the idea of being that, take your whole life. It doesn't matter if you're who you are. You have stories. Everybody has a New York Times best-selling book in them. The challenge is most people don't know the impact it could have or don't believe anybody would read it. And so it's about taking those life stories, all the things you've successfully combated and overcome, and sharing that with others.
The challenge is, you're exactly right, Chad. You're such a smart dude, man. The challenge is seeing the value in your own life, because my life is my life, man.
Yeah.
If I didn't know that people, could get something out of my stories, people told me. People had to help me see that there's value in my experiences. And you need to recognize that as an individual, whoever you are.
Right.
Like you said, brother, everyone's got a never quit story.
Yeah.
Everyone has stories that have value that can be passed along to other people. You just need to recognize it and then learn how to articulate it.
Man, I tell you, if people were in awe of themselves like they were of others, it would be such a different world. The idea of my father-in-law was good friends with Muhammad Ali, and when he passed away, people, people were saying how great Muhammad Ali was, and a great man, a great athlete. But to this day, I've never really been in awe of another human being, because that human being was created the exact same way I was, no different. I respect what they've done and how they've overcome adversity, but there's no human on earth that is better than I am. But I'm no better than any other human being on earth. I have my tools, and some people use them for the life they want. Some people don't. But there's no difference in who we are as human beings, is it?
You hit the nail on the head, brother. We're all made of the same stuff, man.
Yeah.
Don't ever look at the guy next to you and don't ever covet natural talent. Don't ever look at someone else and covet the things that you think might make them different than you, because there is no difference. We have the same tools, we have the same resources. It's learning how to utilize those tools to achieve your goals, man.
Yeah, and people say, well, there's this physical difference. I'm 6'8", right? So I'm taller, but the tools that we're speaking of is this inner tool of belief and worthiness. And one of my greatest stories ever, greatest shift moments in my life, I went and saw the statue of the David in Florence. I was with my wife on vacation, and the docent told me the story that Michelangelo had been working in his shop. Actually, two other artists had been commissioned this piece of rock before. They couldn't find anything. So Michelangelo was working on this piece of rock, creating the sculpture, and they unveiled it over the city of Florence. And people were just like in awe. Like, this thing is amazing. It's beautiful. It's this and that. And a little girl said, "How did you create something so beautiful out of a piece of rock?" And he said, "I didn't. It was there all along. I just chipped away the edges." And that's really us, right? We're born this beautiful, amazing creature, but the wrong words spoken, the wrong circumstances, the wrong people we hang around, the wrong things we feed our minds with, and this rock just starts building up on top of us until we decide to start chipping away at it.
Powerful, brother.
Right? I'm saying that's us. We don't become great. We return to greatness. We embrace our greatness.
I love it.
Totally different, right?
Totally different.
Yeah, listen, I could go on for hours, but I've taken so much of your time.
Oh no, man, it's a pleasure.
And I want to go run. I don't know if we can run. I guess we can run around here, right? Run somewhere near here.
Yeah,
we'll find a trail
we'll
somewhere.
Figure something out.
Yeah. So a couple last questions. So, tell me about the event, because this event, awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chad. And yeah, it's totally unique, man. And right now I call it the finishing school, but it's basically, we're launching it off the 3 of 7 platform. And so this event is very, very exclusive. I can only take 6 people per class. I can probably only run maybe 2 to 3 classes a year at maximum.
Yeah.
So this is not ever something that's going to be, just out there for just go click and sign up.
Yeah.
For me, it's I told you I was passionate about being an instructor, a teacher. So I've taken my passion from being a SEAL instructor, and now I'm offering it to, again, small groups of civilians. So I'm going to put together, or have put together, a full mission profile. What that means is it's you have an objective, and I give you the parameters of the mission, and then we've got a small team, 6 people per class. I'm going to call it a platoon, just like I would, in a SEAL platoon. And within that team, the reason I have to keep it so small is I want every individual in that team to have a important role to fill. So again, we're going to have intel, we're going to have communications, we're going to have a medic, we're going to have an LPO. All the things that we had in a SEAL platoon, we're going to have in this group. Now, for the finishing school, I don't want anybody to ever come to this school and just be a strap hanger and just be along for the ride. I want everybody that comes through this course to have a chance to lead, not only themselves, but others. They need to have a chance to be led by others. They need to have a chance to learn how to work as a team. They need to have a chance to learn how to build a plan and a timeline, and then be able to shift that plan and timeline when things go sideways. and then they have to plan and replan on the fly. All these things are transferable back to ourselves, to our businesses, to our relationships. All these skills that I'm teaching are transferable.
Yeah.
And the full mission, the mission profile, it'll be done in nature. That's another great thing. We're going to disconnect from technology. We're disconnecting. It's going to be mapping compass type, skills. So there's a lot of skills involved in this, but
It's gonna be like out in the woods,
it's going to be out in the woods, just like we would do. Like I said, like we would do a land warfare mission, full mission profile within a SEAL platoon. But obviously here we're not using weapons.
Yeah.
We're not going to get no one's going to attack us. Nothing like that. It's the main objective is to pass along those life skills
That's awesome.
that we learned as SEALs, and the mission is just the conduit to learn those life skills.
Yeah, I love it. And you have one already scheduled.
Yeah,
right?
in March.
And you just selected the 6 people. You had hundreds of applications. You're like, all right, I'm going to go through every one of these. I'm going to pick 6 people, and then I'm going to do it again. And if you can do it 3 times a year, that's crazy.
So, dude, I went through every single application. I narrowed it down to 20.
Yeah.
I scheduled a individual phone call with all 20 of those individuals.
Come on.
These were 30-minute phone calls, man. So, but I wanted that's how intimate this is to me. This team that's going out in March there'll never be another team like that. There'll never be another mission like what they're doing. That's how intimate and exclusive it is. So yeah, I had 20 30-minute phone calls just to finally select the 6. So I've got a lot of time and a lot of planning that goes into this, but again, it's a passion, man.
That's awesome. This is incredible. So, all right. So, 2 questions left. One, where do people find you? Where do they connect you? Listen, you've been on the Lewis Howes podcast, you've been on the Rich Roll podcast. I'm saying you're out there, right? But where do people find you?
So for me personally, it will be on Instagram. That's the only social media platform that I kind of utilize. So it's just Chad Wright, ChadWright 278. And then, of course, 3 of 7 Project is our website. That's got a lot more in-depth stuff about what 3 of 7 represents. And obviously, we've got the products on there. We've got a contact form on there. We've got the podcast, off that website. And then it's also off of, iTunes and all the other places. So, so Instagram, the website, and then the podcast. The podcast is 3 of 7 Podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, check that podcast out because it's awesome. I rolled through. I'm telling you, I listened to a couple and I was like, got kind of addicted. I'm like, all right, I need more of these. I need more of these.
Thank you, Chad. I'm jealous of you, man. I tell you, you got a great show here. You've got, just a great team, and just being able to do this live, it takes it to the next level. It really does.
Yeah.
Not only in the audio quality, but just in the eye-to-eye, face-to-face conversation.
Something about being here in person is really important. And when I can, which is probably 95% of the time, I'm going live because I want this, right? And the whole thing with the podcast for me was I wanted to bring value to people who want it, right? I want free content that people want it. And the way I select guests is, 1, people will ask me to interview, but 2, people that I'm fascinated with, that I'm like, man, I want to have a conversation with this person. I want to ask some great questions. I want to find out. I'm curious. And so once I heard you speak, I'm like, oh, this is, not to mention you have the greatest name ever, right? I'm saying Chad and Chad. So like, there's another Chad.
There's that design again, bro. I'm telling you, man.
Exactly right. Awesome. All right. So first of all, thanks for your time. I know, your time is valuable. So anytime that I think gratitude is one of the great, besides love, is the single greatest emotion that we can have. And the idea of me expressing my gratitude, I can't express enough that you gave up your time, you invited me into your home to share with me and to share with our listeners. So really grateful for that.
It's been an honor, brother. It really has. And like I said, man, I'm on the same mission as you, brother. If this goes out and it affects someone, then the mission accomplished. It's worth worth the time that we put into it. It's been great meeting you, brother, and
Awesome.
Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an excellent job, and just really taking it to the next level, man.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And all right, so last question. When you leave this earth many, many, many years from now, what do you want your contribution to have been?
What do I want my contribution to have been? I mean, dude, I'll just be straight up real with you. I would like my contribution would be to lead people to the love, forgiveness, and the peace that Jesus Christ offers. That's I mean, and that's just the number. If I can do that, if I can show somebody or put a nugget down that brings somebody to that place, because that's what changed my life in an instant. I can't think of any other contribution. So Jesus is always a part of my mission.
Mm.
So.
Man, can't. Wow. Awesome. Great stuff. Listen, check the guy out. He's real deal. A lot of influences out there. This guy's the real deal. So check him out. Chad Wright, 3 to 7 podcast. Hey, awesome, man. Thank you.